Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Clash Royale, and today I am joined by third-time pro on the channel, SushiPayPay. Sushi, would you believe it's been over 8 months since the first time you were on the channel?
I know, man. Like you were telling me about that before the video, and that surprised me. I was like, I thought it was something at 5 months max or something, but 8 months, yeah.
Yeah,
Time flies
time
by.
flies.
Time flies fast, man, and it's good to be back on.
Yeah, it's really good to have you back on because you are known and you're one of my most requested guests as being one of the best or the best Hog Cycle player in the entire game. Last season, you finished at 6,100 trophies using old school, free-to-play friendly Hog Cycle. I am incredibly impressed, and I just look at people like you and I'm just like, how do they do it in that high-end trophies using this simple of a deck? No epic cards, one legendary card. We'll talk about substitutions, and yeah, it's crazy. So I can't wait to get into this deck, and I reached out to you because I saw that you were tearing it up with this deck in actually a grand challenge, and I saw on Stats Royale. I was kind of spying on you, and then I reached out and I said, hey man, come on the channel and talk about the deck, because people have been requesting you left and right, like I said, and you were like, hey, not only that, but I'm playing the deck a lot differently than I used to play it. And that's what really struck me as, okay, I need to get this guy back on. So before we get to that, I know the one thing I love about Hog Cycle is this deck is great whether you're at 2,500 trophies or 4,000 trophies or 6,000 trophies. So talk first a little bit about those ranges, and are you playing Hog Cycle any differently if you're in Arena 7 or if you're at 6,100 trophies or somewhere in the middle?
All right, yeah, great question, Ash. So yeah, let's start off with the lower range. So if you're especially because this is a free-to-play deck, so I imagine a lot of people are gonna be running it down in lower trophy ranges. So we touched on this a little in the last video. In terms of just based off of how you're going to be playing the deck differently, the main thing is that I wouldn't recommend using Musketeer in the first place, just because it can get Fireball down so easily. So like I said, we talked about this. I would recommend doing a Knight Archers combo instead of a Musketeer Ice Golem combo. And obviously, there's a few differences in that respect. Obviously, the Knight's going to be actually like a viable defensive kind of tank. It's going to be doing damage for you. So that's the huge difference that you're going to have to keep in mind, is that you're going to be less reliant on your little ranged cards. So in lower trophy ranges, like I said, those would be the archers. So you can rely more on your Knight and, take down big pushes, counter stuff like graveyards. Knight actually does a decent job at that. So like I said, because I wouldn't recommend the Musketeer. Because you're probably going to be running Knight Archers, I would say, yeah, you can rely more on your tank to do some more defensive pushes and stuff like that. Another main thing to keep in mind is that when you're running Knight, the Knight doesn't synergize quite as well with the Hog on offense, because a lot of times you're going to want to do Ice Golem Hog on offense. So I would also just say sometimes it would be more appropriate to just go off with a Hog, just pick push with the Hog by itself rather than doing like a Knight Hog push. When you're doing something like a Knight Hog push, you kind of want to already have the Knight placed down on defense and kind of more use it as a counter push. So I would say those are the main differences. So I kind of already compared it to how you're going to be playing it in higher trophy ranges. But when it comes to higher trophy ranges, you're definitely going to be wanting to keep in mind not only your capabilities, but your opponent's capabilities. When you're at lower trophy ranges, a lot of times the players are gonna be a lot more unpredictable. They're gonna be making plays that you don't expect, just because they don't know what the right card to use in a lot of scenarios is. So once you're getting higher up, if you're facing a log bait deck and your opponent, thinks that you don't have login cycle, so they think they can drop like a Goblin Gang or something. So you got to keep in mind what your opponents are going to be dropping, because it's gonna in some ways be actually easier to predict what better players are going to drop, because they know the proper cards to counter your cards. So in that respect, when you're higher up, I would say go for a lot of more predictive plays. That's a huge part of this deck, especially against stuff like Three Musketeers and the like. So yeah.
Okay, wow, that was a great answer. That's why I love having you on, man. But okay, so what about somewhere in between? What do you think that threshold is that people should switch out the archers to the musketeer and start making more predictive plays? I know it kind of depends on where you are in the season, right? Because you start out lower, obviously. But is there a certain level on like the Musketeer that you feel comfortable, or is it a trophy range, or how can people tell?
Sure. So with the musketeer thing, it mainly comes down to your own skill level. And what I mean by this is, if you're a really good player, you're gonna be pretty high for your card levels, obviously. So you're gonna be facing a lot of people who have higher card levels than you. So if you know, this is just something you're gonna have to judge yourself. If you know you're facing a lot of people who have level 9, level 10 fireballs, well, you don't want to be using your level 8 musketeer. So that's really a situational circumstance. I would really say for free-to-play players, just go with the archers. It's a safer option. They're going to be getting a lot less fireball value if you're using the archers. So mainly, honestly, the musketeer is going to be something that you're going to be keeping for tournament play, because you know you can't get over leveled in that situation, or if you're max. Other than that, the archers are a lot safer for you to be using, because they're not going to be able to fireball it and get fireball value off of it.
Okay, that's a good answer. So let's talk about the deck first, and before we get into like some of the strategy behind it right now in the meta, because I do want to get to that point that you made about how you're playing the deck a little differently. I want to talk about some of the card decisions in your version of the deck, which is really the classic version. So you have the fireball and the cannon. Can you talk a little bit about why you prefer that to poison and tornado?
Sure, yeah. So let's talk about the buildings first. So like you said, tornado is a big substitution. I know Electrify is a huge fan of using the tornado. We have a lot of discussions about, which one's better to be using in what situations. So yeah, let's talk about a few building substitutions. So when it comes to the tornado, this is kind of a very similar thing that I said in the last video. If you're not max, you definitely don't want to be using the tornado. And I say this because your other cards are probably not going to be strong enough to deal enough damage to take out whatever they're throwing at you in the time that the tornado is distracted. So let's say they drop a giant, for example, and a few support cards behind it, and then you try to tornado it. And if your cards aren't high enough level, well, it's not going to do enough damage to take out the tornado. So in that situation, I would definitely say if you're not max, you don't want to go for the tornado, because you want to have some extra source of damage to beat down all of their offense, especially stuff like giants and golems. You really need to have a lot of DPS if you're not max. So I would never use the tornado if you're not max. If you're max and you're going to use the tornado, go with Electrify's deck. And I say this because he has the knight and the musketeer. It's kind of an uncommon kind of synergy between the two cards, because the knight does, like I was talking about earlier, the knight does a lot of damage, and the musketeer obviously does more damage than your archers. So having both of those two things that do a lot of damage in conjunction with the tornado is going to make sure that you can beat down a lot of offensive pushes. And I quickly want to touch on a few other building substitutes. For a while, people are going to be asking probably, why are you still using the cannon? Why aren't you using the tombstone? Given that there's a lot of P.E.K.K.A decks, a lot of
Bridge spam.
That bridge spam, exactly, battle ram stuff kind of going around. In a vacuum, obviously you're gonna want to have a tombstone ready for their battle ram over a cannon, because the tombstone just does such a good job. But I would say the difference, the cannon is just so much better against stuff like hog riders, and I would argue the cannon's a lot better against stuff like P.E.K.K.As as well, because although the tombstone's gonna be throwing out a lot of skeletons and stuff like that, you already have a ton of stuff in this deck to distract big tanks, such as the P.E.K.K.A. You have the Ice Golem, you have the Ice Spear, and you have the Skeletons. Those are going to distract the P.E.K.K.A. for a really long time. And the cannon, like I was talking about, provides a lot of DPS. It's going to be able to shoot down the tanks, especially stuff like P.E.K.K.A. and even Battle Ram, a lot better. And one interaction to keep in mind, if you have a cannon against a battle ram and you drop an Ice Spirit on that battle ram, it's not even going to hit your cannon, and then that cannon is just going to be getting a ton of value against whatever bandit and night witch or whatever they have behind that. And just quickly, like you asked, poison versus the fireball, this is a quick discussion. The fireball is simply better in hog decks, especially hog cycle decks, for one simple reason. When you're running hog, you're doing a lot of predictive plays, like I was talking about. You got to be getting in and out really fast on offense. So if you're facing something like 3 musketeers, a lot of times they have minion horde in that deck, if you don't have Fireball to take down their minion horde predictably, you're gonna have a really hard time breaking through a lot of pushes and defenses. So that's why I say the Fireball is better than the Poison.
You make very compelling arguments, and your gameplay backs it up here. You can see on the screen right now, you're doing a pretty good job shutting down a really, really heavy Golem beatdown deck here in this replay that we're watching, using the cannon to do a lot of damage to the tanks. People forget about how much DPS a cannon does. It's pretty solid, you know?
Yep.
But, okay, so, go ahead.
I know, you can talk.
Okay, so the next question is, because, you know, this is a quintessential free-to-play deck, what about Zap versus Log? You know, Zap is really good against, you know, Night Witch's bats, or of course against skeletons. Log is a great predictive play. How do you feel about Log versus Zap?
Right. I mean, you know me, I really like the Log. You know, for a long time before the, you know, if this was pre-Zap nerf, when the Zap, you know, would just kill goblins and stuff like that,
yeah.
I would probably still be using the Zap. The deck actually had Zap originally in it. But I just prefer the Log so much more right now, because I like to think of the Log kind of in a sense like a kind of mini tornado, right? Because you're basically providing your other cards with more time to deal damage because you're knocking back all their troops. That's super important. There's so many interactions that I see where the Log is just gonna provide so much more value for you. Like when they have a musketeer at the bridge, if you log it back, that'll only get 1 hit, versus if you zap it, gets 2 or 3. Same kind of thing with the Ewiz. So I prefer the Log just because in general it does more damage. It knocks back everything. Obviously, that's how the Log works. A lot of pros ask me, especially, why don't you use the Zap? You know, it synergizes so well with the Ice Golem. When they have a minion horde,
Yeah.
you can zap, you know, Ice Golem zap, and it'll take it out. Yeah, Ice Spirit Zap as well. Exactly. You know, the Zap, it's good, but like I said, you already have so many kinds of things to deal with minions. You have the Musketeer does decent against minions. You have the Fireball to take down minions. You can kite minions all over the place with Ice Spirit and Skeletons, especially if you know how to use them. So if you just practice with the Log a lot more, you'll find that the Zap just really isn't necessary, and that you'll find a lot more value when using the Log. But like I said, if you don't have the Log, the Zap works perfectly fine. Just, it's not a huge deal. Just don't feel like you can't run the deck because you don't have Log. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, how are you playing this deck differently? You said you're playing it differently. How are you playing it differently?
Right.
Than you were a year ago or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So there's it depends on the matchup. A lot of it comes down to the shifts in the meta, what other people are running. If you're running a classic deck, you have to adapt and adapt and adapt to every new meta that comes at you. And with every new meta, there's different ways that you have to play the deck. So, yeah. So let's get into that. The main thing that makes you play this deck a lot differently is the fact that the Night Witch exists. Okay. So for example, before the Night Witch existed, I would say that the Hog Cycle deck 2.6 would hard counter Golem. It would beat it almost every time if you played it correctly. Now that Night Witch exists, because Night Witch can counter Hog with only 1 hit on tower, and it's a Night Witch, and it's gonna be used for a counter push as well. You have to play a lot differently. You have to play a lot more conservatively than you would otherwise. If you recall some of my older videos, I would used to say, just go all in. A lot of the times, especially before double elixir, just go all in, try to get as much damage as possible. You can't do that anymore because the Night Witch exists. If you go all in, if you Ice Golem Hog, they're gonna Night Witch it and just almost shut it down completely. So it comes down a lot to playing the deck more like a control deck than it used to be. Because especially, I don't know, are you watching the bridge spam? Have you watched the bridge spam replay that I sent yet? Or
yeah, we did. We're on to the last one right now.
Yeah, so the bridge spam replay, that's a great example of that. I encourage people to maybe go back into the video just to watch that replay so you understand what I'm talking about.
Yep,
because I do this a lot.
I believe we played. Yep.
Yeah, so I wanted to answer another question you asked me that is related to this. Off the start, I'm still going to go Ice Golem Hog because it's still really important for you to get that early damage in with a Hog Cycle deck. Ice Golem Hog is the most preferable. If you don't have it, I like to do Ice Spirit Hog. That still works great. So I still go aggressive off the start. But once you figure out what they're running, if they have a Night Witch, a lot of times what you want to do is just drop a Hog with an Ice Spirit. You don't want to drop like huge pushes, Musketeer Hog, stuff like that, because they're just going to shut it down. You just got to do little small pushes to kind of chip away at the tower. And the deck kind of becomes a chip cycle deck in that sense, because you really got to be getting your damage slowly, making sure you don't overextend so you have enough elixir to defend their bridge spam pushes and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, that makes good. That makes a lot of sense. So, when are you still waiting primarily to double elixir time to do the predictive fireballs, or will you throw one out early if you can kind of get a read on your opponent?
Predictive fireballs are inherently a lot easier to do when you're in double elixir time, just because it's easier to know if your opponent has something back in cycle, because there's obviously cycling their deck a lot faster. So if you see that they haven't played a card for a little while, chances are they have it in cycle. Chances are they're going to play it against your hog. So it's going to be a lot safer to do predictive plays. When you're in single elixir, people are going to be cycling a lot more slowly. It's going to be more difficult to know what your opponent's going to play just because of that fact. So predictive plays, when it comes to single elixir, they're more risky. They're more it's more of a high risk, high reward kind of thing, because, for example, if you fireball on a predictive fireball, a minion horde in single elixir, and they don't drop the minion horde, well, keep in mind, because you're not regenerating elixir as fast, you're going to have a lot harder time dealing with their counter push, because you're not generating that elixir as fast as you would in double elixir. So if you get the play off in single elixir, it usually wins you the game, honestly, because you're just going to be, because they also don't have double elixir either. So your hog's just going to get a ton of damage off on them. But it's obviously a lot safer to do it in double elixir for the reasons that I just talked about.
Okay. Can you share another replay or play a live match?
Yeah. I mean, let's just get into the live match.
Let's get into a live match. Let's get one in before we let you go.
Oh, yep,
Do you want to do?
So I'm in a match right now. We're against Juan from Hypervenoms. So I'm gonna try to do a play-by-play on this. So
sure, yeah. We
have Ice Golem, Hog, and starting hand. I'm just gonna go for it because we have Cannon and Skeletons. Sometimes I like to cycle the Skeletons because it kind of forces them sometimes to play a card. Sometimes they just let it, they just let the Skeletons go, but sometimes it forces them to play a card.
P.E.K.K.A. What is this?
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
2016.
Yeah, so like I said, we're earlier on in this GC right now, so we're definitely gonna be facing a lot of weird decks.
Night Witch.
Yeah, Night Witch, pretty typical. I'm just gonna put. Oh wow.
Whoa.
Yeah, so.
We should have done ladder.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, so this guy, he's running some really weird.
But sometimes
right
these can be dangerous, right?
Oh yeah, a lot of times more dangerous because, like I said, you don't know how to predict what your opponents are doing.
Yeah.
So it becomes a lot harder a lot of the time. But we were able to clean up that push, thankfully. Really intimidating push. So yeah, there's a lot of intricate little plays that you got to be making with Hog Cycle with your cycle cards, especially those one elixir kind of cards.
Yeah.
Are really important, especially in this meta against bridge spam and stuff. But yeah, this is going to be a really tough matchup because I was hoping to touch on this in the discussion. When it comes to Golem decks, if they have, a card that does a really good job against Hog, like Mini P.E.K.K.A, for example, it's going to be really tough because a lot of what you're trying to do is counter push right when they drop their, or push the other lane, or even the same lane sometimes when they drop a Golem. And when they have something cheap like a Mini P.E.K.K.A that just takes down your Hog, it becomes really difficult. But like I said, he doesn't have his Mini P.E.K.K.A back quite yet. So we saw he dropped a Golem. He doesn't have a good counter to my Hogs. So we're just going to go in right now and get a good chunk of damage.
There's one thing that you just touched on right now.
Yeah?
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, we're going to drop the Musketeer first because it would have been too early to drop the Cannon. Fireball log this. Just take care of the Night Witch really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, so this is looking okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Okay,
so,
important question. On a big push coming your way, whether it be a Night Witch Golem or whether it be, a P.E.K.K.A whatever, right? Or 2 Musketeers or something, right? A big push is coming your way. I know that with a cycle deck, card order is paramount. Very, very important. That way you can cycle back to the most important defense.
Yeah.
What order are you dropping your cards? Does it really matters a lot, I assume, in this deck.
Right. Yep, that's something I want to touch on. Especially with tank decks, it's really important. So there's 2 different, every tank deck, it's a bit different. So do you want me to go into one more match maybe?
Go in one more, yeah. We could do an hour-long video, Sushi.
Oh, it was okay. I'll just finish this up then.
Yeah,
What I'm talking
no,
about.
no, no. Do one more. It's cool.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So when it comes to golems, a lot of times they're gonna have lightning in their deck. Oh my god.
Nemsensei! Wow. We
Wow.
always get the good matches. This is beautiful. Okay, want me to let you concentrate here?
How about we do this match and then I maybe talk over it afterwards if you have time. If not, it's totally fine. But yeah, it'd be nice to concentrate on this.
Yeah, sure. Concentrate, and I'll kind of.
Yeah, maybe you can.
Cannon cart.
Yeah, I don't even know. You know, it's a new card.
Yeah.
Don't really know the best way to counter this, but we'll see what we can do. He got a ton of damage off there. It's a cool looking deck.
Yeah, that was a really interesting.
Yeah, so
first
cannon
push.
cart. Yeah, cannon cart's new card. Obviously, still everyone's trying to learn how to counter it. But I do know that Ice Golem does a great job against cannon cart. I believe OJ talked about that. Yeah, so if you just drop an Ice Golem on cannon carts with this deck, it'll usually just completely take care of it. The reason why I didn't there is because obviously he had like a Dark Goblin and a ton of other stuff. Wow, okay.
Oh my word. Nemsensei, for those who don't know, a really, really good player, second place finisher in EU CCGS, and really known for doing well with off-meta decks. And you can see he's definitely going a bit off-meta here, well, a lot off-meta here,
Yeah.
with the Cannon Cart Night Witch in the graveyard deck with Dark Goblin, nonetheless. But really good defensive move there with the Cannon, and you saw that in the replays too, using Cannon behind the tower on defense.
Oh, I played that in the wrong lane. That's unfortunate. But I think we're just going to drop a cannon on this since he doesn't have anything that I would need to cannon.
It's cannon on cannon crime.
Yeah, so a lot of people, they're scared to use their cannon for anything that doesn't target buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to try to tower trade. Yeah, they're really scared to use their cannon on anything that's, you know, not a defensive targeting kind of troop. But if they don't have any in their deck, obviously just feel free to use your cannon however you like. It's not very important. Like against Logbait, all often cannon princesses. It's not even that uncommon. So
That's
yeah,
good advice.
I think we might be able to take his tower.
Oh!
Yeah, but
How did that hog not get a
I
hit
think we're
there?
going to be able to take his tower down.
Yeah.
He did a... Okay. Woo! Crazy. Gonna have to fireball, yep. Ugh.
Come on.
Okay,
Oh!
okay.
All right, well, you can cycle to a fireball.
Gonna try to
Can you cycle
the
to a
log.
log? That's the question.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. All right, so we're
Yeah.
back in the driver's seat here. This is going to be so intense. All right.
Oh my god.
So he's got to be saving up
Yeah,
for a
this
big
is-
graveyard in the pocket push again.
Oh yeah, he's gonna go for it right here. We're gonna try to get our musketeer back. I'm gonna end up logging this.
Okay.
Okay, well, he
so
got it.
close. That
was a
a
great
tough
match,
deck,
though.
man.
I know, yeah. I mean, caught me really off guard. I'm really happy we got that in there.
Me too. You want to share the
yeah.
replay? We'll go over real quick.
Yeah, there was one or two. You want to click on it? I'm clicking
Yeah,
on
yeah.
it.
I'm in. I'll pause at the beginning.
Unpause. Yep. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
Okay, cool.
Right. So.
So you had no idea he's playing cannon cart, so that took you by surprise. You got a lot of damage on that first push.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I think I went hog right here. I believe. Yep. I just want to comment on that placement with the hog ice golem. The reason why I put it straight down the middle on the first play instead of pig pushing is because if they have a tornado, tornadoes actually can't pull a hog to tower if you place the ice golem hog like that. So if they try to tornado, the hog won't get pulled to the king tower, and you're just gonna get a ton of damage. So that's why I picked that.
Wow. Okay, that's really good advice. I'm glad we covered that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you that too, but one of the million questions I didn't get a chance to ask you yet.
Yeah. So let's talk about the play that just went on my defense against that cannon cart push. The main problem, the reason why I took so much damage there, was because I fireballed, but then the cannon cart's shield was still up right as the fireball hit. So then the cannon that came out of it didn't actually get hit by the fireball. So that's kind of what happened on that defense. If you saw his the stationary cannon actually got a ton of damage because of that. So yeah, it's nice to see people experimenting with these new cards and everything though.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was one more misplay. I think it was right here where I played the musketeer in the wrong lane.
Yep.
But a lot of times I do stuff like that on purpose because it's really important just to keep in mind that even if someone's pushing with a Night Witch battle ram down one lane, that doesn't mean you have to place the musketeer down the same lane just because the musketeer has so much range. So if they're pushing down the same lane that you have their stronger tower in, feel free to place the musketeer down the opposite lane so you snipe down their defense and then you have a great counter push to take down their weaker tower.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So here at this point, you're still quite a ways behind.
I wasn't feeling too scared at this point, just knowing he's running a graveyard deck, I'm running a hog deck. I knew I would have a slight advantage if I took this tower out. I was pretty confident that I would be able to. Unfortunately, I didn't get that last hog shot there. I remember when the game was happening, you were like, oh, so yeah, that was unfortunate.
Yeah, that was
hog almost
that felt awful. I thought for sure you were gonna at least get one hit there.
Yeah, so it happens a lot of times. In that situation, that would have saved me 2 logs, which is fairly significant, but it would at this point I still had a chance of winning. So I want to see what actually went wrong.
Yeah, right here. So
I think already right here when I placed that Ice Golem Musketeer, that was a mistake. I was just really panicking, trying to get back to my log as soon as possible. And then that just gave him a lot of poison value. Just killed my Ice Golem Musketeer really easily. So yeah, that was a fatal error.
Would you have cannoned
right
instead?
Sorry?
Would you have cannoned instead? Used the cannon in the corner?
Like I was saying, I said earlier while I was doing the match that you can cannon against a lot of their non-building targeting cards if they don't have any. But when you're facing graveyard, any kind of graveyard deck that doesn't have like a giant golem, anything that targets a building, a lot of times, and people laugh at me for doing this, they're like, oh, the guy who places cannons on graveyards. But cannon, if you look at the stats, has a 0.8 second hit speed. It takes out skeletons very quickly. If you're able to stop their tank at the bridge before your tower locks on and get a cannon on their graveyard, it'll completely shut it down. So don't be afraid to do unconventional plays like that. I don't even consider that an unconventional play. I do that all the time.
Yeah, no, I was asking that at the very end there, would you have, if you could do it over again, I think maybe you could have played the cannon against the graveyard before you put the Ice Spirit, or the Ice Golem, excuse me, and the Musketeer down?
Yes, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, so, just when it comes to those kinds of situations, I had to get 2 logs on that tower. My first priority was making sure I got it down, but it's important, to keep all dimensions of the game intact. So what I should have been doing is while I was cycling, setting up against his graveyard, exactly, making sure, especially because if you put the cannon in that spot in the corner, like you were saying, it'll soak up a lot of the shots from the graveyard as well, because a lot of the skeletons are going to be hitting the cannon instead of the graveyard. So
That's true, yeah. Well, Sushi, you have been an absolute incredible guest, man. You're my favorite. I gotta get you on more often, dude. But because I feel we should have a part 2, because there's like so many questions still, but I feel like I've taken up too much of your time already, and it's just been so much information. I love it, man. I'm sure the viewers will too. Any shout outs, anything like that before we let you go, man?
Nothing much. A lot of us top players right now, we've been playing kind of different games like Minecraft and stuff when we're like bored. I don't know. People make fun of us, but we've had fun with it. So sometimes, people like Hazard, they'll be streaming those kinds of things. So if you're interested in that, maybe take a look. Still, we're all primarily playing, CR, of course. That's just something in case anyone's interested.
Sometimes you gotta blow off some steam, right?
Yep, exactly. It's good to have, a kind of game to get you off tilt every once in a while.
For sure. Well, best of luck this season. I know you're gonna go for your a new personal best. So wishing you the best, man. And thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much, Ash. Hope you have a great day.
You too. Thanks, man. So that is it from Sushi, guys. Make sure you check him out. Social media will be linked in the description below. Show him some love. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I did. I feel like I want to go play Hog Cycle all day and all night now. Make sure you also give Bren Chong, my YouTube partner, some love. His information is down there as well. Giveaways, tournaments, much, much more. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, take care, guys.